there have been a lot of times where I didn't know what was going to happen and could envision the worst.
Yeah.
And there have been times when it's been extremely difficult and extremely fearful and extremely challenging. And I can honestly say that in my adult life, all of my worst dreams have come true.
Welcome to season 2 of Chewing the Fat. I am your host, Big Rob. Thank you so much for deciding to come back, download the episode. I am so excited to be back behind the mic again. Had a nice hiatus. I caught the Rona, feeling much better, but I am so glad to be back here with you. Thank you to all the folks who have bought me a coffee during the hiatus. I appreciate that. From Lydia and also Shelly, thank you so much for supporting the podcast and allowing me to do this. It's so much fun. And I'm really excited to connect with an old friend on our episode 1 here of season 2. Please welcome Scott Brinson.
Thank you very much.
You're just kind of giggling there. It's like, what do I do with that?
I'm very, very, I didn't realize this would be the kickoff episode for your second season. So I'm very, very honored that you asked me.
I really am glad that you said yes. Scott and I worked together at a television station probably 30 years ago.
Almost. It was like 1990 with
3 or 4, something like that. Yeah. Scott, an amazing videographer and storyteller. I was just the old sound guy in the booth. But I don't know. We've just stayed in touch, you know. I mean, there was probably like 10 years that went before before they invented Facebook, and then just kind of,
that was the big connector. I mean, that was the big connector with me and a lot of people who I hadn't spoken to in several years. But I mean, and you're one of the people you're one of the reasons I haven't deleted Facebook.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because there's a handful of people that I'm not aware of or haven't really been active with on other social media platforms. And so that's the way, that I hear from them, or, which, I mean, that would be easy to solve just by exchanging phone numbers.
I mean, who calls people anymore, right? Come on.
Yeah.
But you have gone on and done lots of different things. Of course, you came to Augusta. You were not an Augusta native, correct?
No, okay. No.
So where did you come? Where are you born? Where you come from?
I was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but I don't know anything about that because my parents moved when I was like 6 months old.
Oh, there you go.
So
yeah.
Thank God. No. So I grew up in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
We settled there when I was 5, and I lived in Virginia Beach until I graduated from college. And I graduated from JMU in Virginia and with a degree in broadcasting.
Okay.
And had just blown it out. I mean, I was the campus anchorman for the local TV, campus news.
Mm-hmm.
I was the local on our campus radio station was an NPR affiliate, and so in the mornings, starting at like 5:30, would do the news cut-in, local news cut-ins. So it was all tied into my degree, and it was an internship, and et cetera, et cetera. But by the time I graduated, I just had these from somewhere, I don't know where, these noble ideals that I didn't have a burning desire to bring the news to people. So why am I doing this? Just to be on television,
right?
Which didn't seem, seemed like BS. And so I wanted to study acting. That's what I always wanted to do, but my parents wouldn't really get behind that. So a lot of my friends in broadcasting at JMU got jobs at CNN, as entry level, and they were all coming to Atlanta. And one drunken night, and they were like, "What's keeping you here? Why don't you just come to Atlanta with us?" Okay. And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So that was that. So I was 22, 23, and hit Atlanta like a rocket. And burned out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I moved here in the fall of 1985, and I got sober in September of 1988.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
it was like 3 years of really living it up.
Mhm.
I got a job as a waiter because I figured I would go on auditions and study theater and all that kind of stuff. And it started out that way.
Yeah.
But along the way, I gave up the ghost and came out of the closet, which I was the only one who didn't know. Come to find out, that was a big waste of time.
Oh.
So I found, I like to dance. I was always a really good dancer. And so I discovered the clubs and started basically living in them. And that got out of control real fast. And, luckily I burned out quickly. And it was, it was divine intervention, literally, that I ended up at my first AA meeting. Had never really thought of getting sober before. Didn't even quite realize I had a problem with alcohol. Just realized that really messed up things had started happening in my life, and alcohol was a through line. It was always there. Fortunately for me, I was too poor and too scared to get into drugs really hardcore.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Who could afford cocaine? Not me.
Yeah.
So it was alcohol. And so once I got there, I surrendered pretty easily. It was easy for me to just admit, I don't have a better idea. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm lost. And so at 25, I got sober, and I felt old. I mean, I was like hagged out 25, looking back, holy cow, 25 is young.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm very happy to say that I've lived most of my adult life as a recovering sober adult, and also according to the principles of living life that I learned through the 12-step program.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that I never over-examined the whole thing to the point where I started questioning and thinking I had a better plan. I figured and it's worked out for me, as long as I just don't overanalyze that.
Right.
Just do what I'm supposed to do. Do what I know has worked for me. Yeah. And it did. I mean, I know a lot of people fall into a lot of traps, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. And there are lots of alternatives that have come up since then. But the classic way has worked for me. And so for that, I'm really grateful. And it has led to every opportunity that I've had. I mean, every opportunity I've had in my adult life can be traced back to the fact that I got sober. Oh, okay. So what happened was, I was a waiter. I was tired of being a waiter. A friend of mine that I had been in the clubs with, who wasn't really clubbing anymore either, was a visual manager at Macy's, and he needed help for Christmas. Okay. He said, come be my Christmas help. I'm pretty sure you could do it. I did that, and it went really well. And he said, I need an assistant. They're going to let me hire one. Will you be it? I said, yes. I was with Macy's for like a year, and they offered me the Augusta store to be the visual manager.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So, and, the acting thing, I said, one thing my drinking took away from me was the courage to audition. So I really wasn't really thinking about that anymore. Yeah. And so I took this opportunity. I had a year clean under my belt. So, I was like, if you want to take this shit, do it. So I did, and moved to Augusta. Quickly got rooted. Shout out to the West Side Club and the Hill group. Got rooted in recovery in Augusta.
That's great.
And the recovery in Augusta is really, really strong. And I learned a lot about life that I thought I knew everything. You can tell me anything. But these people taught me a lot of lessons about just being a human among humans, and what the nature of genuine friendship is, and unconditional love, and just all kinds of things like that. It was really, really, especially in hindsight, very healthy developmental time for me. Macy's lasted about a year and a half.
Yeah.
because they started going through bankruptcy and everything got really shady and it was not a good place to work anymore. I was miserable. Yeah. So I quit.
Okay.
Quit with no plan and no money in the bank. So it was a friend of mine from the West Side Club who saw an ad in the paper for running the teleprompter at Channel 12 and said, you have a degree, you're probably overqualified. Why don't you give it a shot?
Right.
So I did, and it worked out, and I got hired. And I went from being the teleprompter operator to eventually, not too long, after a few months, to being a videographer. Mm-hmm. And that's how, eventually you and I met. Yeah. And it was through our producer, Mandy.
Yes.
Whose father came through town one night, and she invited me to dinner as a sort of a buffer between her and her father. It was a great experience. We had, a perfectly fine evening.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, she had gotten a job and moved away. He calls me at Channel 12. Like the news is about to start. Uh-huh. And says, I thought we've been trying to locate someone for this position and we can't find anybody. And so I was trying to think outside of the box and I thought of you. We're starting a new television network. Would you be interested in moving to California?
Wow.
And I'm like, can I call you back? We're about to go on the air.
Yeah.
And that new television network was UPN. And so I got hired to be part of the management team that got UPN on the air.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't think in the subsequent years that when I tell people that this happened, I don't think a lot of people really genuinely believed it, because how does that happen?
Right.
Who goes from being a videographer in Augusta to being a broadcast operations manager and then director in Hollywood? How does that happen?
Right.
But it did.
Yeah.
And what I can say is the fact that I was sober.
Yeah.
Is what enabled me to, I think, take those chances, like look at them rationally, weigh pros and cons, talk to people, and then take the chances, So, and then again, once I got to Los Angeles, I got myself, connected to recovery, the recovery community there.
That's great.
Right away
because I feel like that would be, that's what that you're walking, out of the frying pan into the fire when you're going to Los Angeles, as far as like
that's exactly it.
A recovery. I mean, you're there, and it's literally every breath, every footstep is a temptation.
Well, and the great thing is that, if you move to another city within the recovery community and you show up at a meeting or whatever, and you say, because you have to be brave enough to do it. You have to be brave enough to stand up and say, I'm Scott. I just moved here. I don't know anybody. I've got this huge job and I'm really afraid because I want to do really well, but this is a complete unknown. So, I'm here. And people, I did that when I moved to Augusta. People surround you with their love and their arms and their phone numbers. And then it's on, me to take advantage of, utilizing that,
right.
Which I did. And it worked. It all worked. So that was a really golden period of my life.
That's great. And then from there and all the stuff that happened with UPN and that and the other.
Yeah. Then things happened.
Did you come back to Georgia directly from there, or? Yep.
I got laid off from UPN because it had been hemorrhaging money the entire time, and there was a change in regime at the top. So the people who, hired me and promoted me were gone.
Yeah.
And then eventually the guy that they brought in was from Disney, who was notorious for cost cutting, and they saw redundancies between myself and services that were already being performed by Paramount Television syndication on the Paramount lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, why are we paying him? Why don't we to run this department? Why don't we just subcontract? Which is what they did. Wow. So I got a really nice severance package, but I was shell shocked, and that's putting it mildly, because people had been coming and going. There was transition going, but I and my department physically got us on the air, and my record was like spotless with them, and we had never had an incident. And the biggest thing that happened one time, Telstar 401, which was our satellite that we uplinked all of our programming to, went off its orbit in outer space and vanished.
Oh no! Wow.
And I get a phone call at like 2:00 in the morning on a Friday, like, Mr. Brinson, you have some feeds coming up, and we just wanted to contact you first because your satellite is no longer in space.
Like,
what?
How do I fix that?
Well, they were
on somebody else's satellite.
Basically, that's it. They already had a plan in place. They needed me to approve it. And so I did. And then it was on me to get in touch with everybody and make sure that everybody knew what was going on. And, being able to handle that situation, my stock was really high at the network for some time.
Wow.
Anyway, so I get laid off. I'm just shocked. So the Cinderella story blew up, and I moved back to Atlanta and took this. I needed cash, so I took this job doing visuals at a luxury retailer here. So I'm not going to say their name because I don't have great things to say about them at this point. Hopefully, it won't slip out later. I take this job and ended up staying there for 20 years.
Wow.
Because it was a safe harbor. I mean, the people who ran the place, who were running the place at the time, liked me, appreciated me. I felt valued. I had great insurance, and it was a fun job with fun people. And I had a boss who was just so talented and so much fun. He was from LA. And so we had that. It was like, I had that, but in Atlanta, I had that connection, but in Atlanta. So, but then things started happening. I turned 40 and found out that I was HIV positive. Thinking that I had escaped that whole thing. Guess again. So there was dealing with that. And it was, it took, a few years for me to even be able to get my head straight that, okay, you're not going to die.
Right.
Things are different.
Right.
Luckily, I walked into a terrific doctor, internal medicine, who took care of me for just a couple of decades until he retired and moved away. So I felt taken care of. It eventually, and then, connected with the recovery community again,
right,
and showed up with this just bottomless fear that I had.
Right.
And people walked me through that and loved me through that. And I was able to move forward. Then when I turned 48, I found out I had colon cancer.
Wow.
I had gotten into the best shape of my life, swimming a mile a day, 4 times a week, and working out and, just looking good, having fun, but had this recurring pain that over months became more regular. And it was like every time I ate breakfast, lunch, dinner, about 20 minutes later, it was like the food was hitting a bad patch in the road.
Wow.
So my doctor, that same doctor, he was trying to eliminate other things, but eventually he recommended I have first they did a scan, and then there's a shadow showed up, and then he wanted me to have a colonoscopy right away. And that's when they found a tumor.
Wow.
And it was stage 3 colon cancer. And, I was like completely unprepared for that. And to the point where when my doctor told me they had made an appointment with a surgeon for me, and this was the appointment time, I went by myself because I thought I was just meeting the doctor.
Right.
No, this was the appointment where the surgeon laid out how she was going to treat me and what they were going to do and what was laying ahead of me for the next few months. Wow. And I left there thinking I should have brought somebody with me.
Someone should be driving me home.
I should, but did not question. I know a lot of people, when they get that kind of diagnosis, immediately start doing their own investigative work. I made a conscious decision not to do that because I couldn't process the fact that it was happening in the first place, much less overwhelming myself with too much information.
Right.
So I put the blinders on and did exactly what I was told.
Yeah.
And that was, 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. I've been clear ever since. They had the surgery, they got the tumor, sewed the colon back up, and then I did like 12 rounds of chemotherapy, which was, no picnic. But in relation to people with far more serious types of cancers, it was not the worst that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
And I've been clear ever since.
That's great.
So, trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, trauma.
Yeah.
Really big things.
Yeah.
I
mean, you
fear.
Yeah. It sounds like you've been hit with one thing after the other, and like I said, but and I know life is like that, I think for everyone to different degrees, but I mean, it seems like you got hit with a lot of stuff, a lot of those.
The thing is,
I don't want to call you extra, but you got hit with a lot of high level stuff.
If you're going to do it, do it right.
Exactly.
But see, here's the thing. I mean, the whole concept of one day at a time.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was introduced to this, fairly early on in my adult life. And so it's like, so I would take these situations and just take what I could handle for that day, to try not to figure things out that I knew I couldn't figure out, to just like let go of what was obviously futile for me to try to wrestle with in my head,
right.
And to try to just do what I could do each day. And that's what I meant by like put the blinders on, to just kind of get through each day. Yeah. And so living in that way, I never really looked back and connected everything together and was like, and to be like, holy cow,
Yeah.
I never really looked at it that way until after the cancer surgery, after that whole thing had resolved itself and I turned 50.
Yeah.
And, pardon me, I started having, I guess you could call it survivor guilt, or I don't know, existential midlife crisis hitting me late. It's like, why am I still here?
Yeah.
I mean, I survived coming out, HIV, alcoholism, colon cancer, my dream life falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? And no burning bush cave down, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But I started taking advantage of opportunities that would occur to me, or thoughts that I started acting on thoughts that would occur to me, not wasting time. One of those was I was adopted and had always known that I was adopted, and was given a really good upbringing in childhood. And, my parents did everything that they could for me. I was not an appreciative kid. I was lots of regret about how I treated my family, but I had a lot of pain from school.
Yeah.
It's like I always say, I wasn't abused in my home. I was abused at school, like for years. And I would take that pain out on my parents because I knew I was in my head. I was like, I was safe there. They were never going to kick me out. They were never going to get rid of me.
Right. So
it was like subconsciously, it was a safe place to sort of rage and act out.
Yeah.
Those poor people. So when I finally went away to college, it was a break for everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, flash forward, I decided to, I'm 50 years old. Time is passing. Why don't I see if I can find out something about my birth family genealogy. And state of Oklahoma over the years had changed their laws such that they now, for their adoptions, they had opened up a search register, a two-way search registry, where if the birth mother had signed up, or father, and the adoptee had both signed to the register, they would match.
Oh, wow.
Which is not always how Oklahoma had been, because I had tried this before and had run up against basically an iron curtain. But things had changed. changed. And so found out that my birth mother had signed up for the registry. It took a long time because they had trouble following her path, but they finally, had a name. It was a woman that I knew
Oh,
in
wow.
Los Angeles.
Wow.
She had been my temporary sponsor for a hot minute.
What?
Hand to God.
What?
And, if it was a Lifetime movie, a bell would have gone off or something, but we didn't.
She didn't know. You didn't
She
know.
didn't know. I didn't know. I gravitated toward her, but only because I thought she was really cool, and thought it would be a positive influence, just a good influence that I could use in my life at that time.
Wow.
Scheduling didn't work out. She had a really full life. She was like a circuit speaker within the recovery community. She traveled to speak. She had like a lot of sponsees. She was like a little recovery celebrity.
Yeah.
Not little, actually, kind of a big one. And so it just didn't work out, no hard feelings or anything. It was just kind of like, I need to find somebody else who can, so yeah, that was my birth mother.
Wow.
And the way that I know for sure, because it's, I didn't believe it until the adoption service told me there was another son. And so if, they would get in touch with him, and if he was, Copa said cool about it, they would do a DNA test, that we could arrange to have a DNA test taken.
Yeah.
And so that happened through a mutual, the person that put us together was actually a mutual friend of ours from the LA recovery community, who knew both of us independently. And so he put us together, convincing the other son that he could trust me, that I wasn't like a psycho or a freak.
Right.
Test worked out. Wow. So as it was as much of a match as possible. And so we met each other. I mean, I have a half brother. He's 10 years younger than I am.
Wow.
And at the point that we finally connected, when he found out that I lived in Atlanta, he said, we're moving there. Like, what? His wife's family, she grew up in Avondale Estates, which is a community just outside of Metro Atlanta.
Yeah.
And they were moving here to be closer to her family.
Oh my god!
Because his mother had passed away. I don't think I said that. She had passed away.
I was about to ask if you had a chance to connect with her.
Big drop detail. She was dead. Yeah. So that was a miss path, but I never got really too upset about that because we had met.
Right.
And Cass, which is my brother's name, told me that the time during which I knew her was one of the best times of her life. So if she had a choice, she would have wanted me to know her as that version of herself.
Oh, wow.
Because later in her life, she got ill and there were financial problems and things got really challenging before she passed away. So I met her at a great time.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, my half brother lives here in Lawrenceville with his wife.
Have you guys gotten together, had a coffee or a lunch? Or?
Yes, we did. We started having regular dinners, and he was a special effects makeup artist in LA. Worked on several really big films, Avenger movies and Birdman and stuff like that. Yeah, and he specialized in like monster makeup.
Yeah.
And so it was really funny. It was like he made things ugly and I made things beautiful. That was our two professions were like the other side of the coin of each other.
Yeah.
And so he's an artist. He's like a pure artist in temperament and personality and everything. And so we have, we really have that in that view of things in common. And
I mean, I guess that's pretty cool that he can do that work in Atlanta now. So much of Hollywood has moved to Georgia.
That's exactly right.
And he can continue his work or whatever. And, I mean, they're building another studio like every 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
Atlanta, Athens, and all these other places like that.
Exactly.
And maybe he can get you, that acting thing you wanted to do. You're still a good looking guy.
Well, thank you. But I mean, that's, it certainly is possible, but not something that that I'm pursuing right now. I mean, the fact is right now I am in sort of a an idle pattern. The place where I worked, things had evolved. They had gone through several bankruptcies in the mid 80s and had taken on a lot of leveraged debt, and such that they had like $4 billion in debt.
Ooh.
And it was really weighing the company down. And there were regime changes. And finally, the people they brought in at the last stages to save the company started just slashing everything. And my boss that I had spoken about, who was so talented, had been with them for like 23, 25 years, got laid off.
Oh, wow.
And they weren't going to give him his retirement package. He was like a year from retirement, but he fought for it and he got it. The whole culture changed from being a place where you were valued as a person and as a human being, to being disposable. And finally came to the point where I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I quit.
Yeah.
Basically, shades of leaving Macy's when I was in Augusta, and then also leaving UPN.
Yeah.
Because my father, in the interim, my parents had passed away, and my father passed away last, and so his estate, I got a chunk of change, which I'm not rich by any means, but it was enough that I didn't have to worry about trying to find a job right away.
Right.
And so the question became, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Because I was never a retail person. I just had sort of a talent for that, a knack for it. It wasn't something I ever really wanted to do. And it just became a place that I stayed because all that stuff started happening in my life, and it was a safe harbor. So pretty much over the last year, I've been, the last 7 months in earnest, looking for a job back in television.
Yeah.
Only now it's not just television, it's basically media, because there's streaming and there's a million different variations on it. But what I'm finding is being away from the industry for that long, things have evolved. And I'm not looking for an executive position or anything like that. I mean, I was, being humble about it, looking for entry level, like staff positions in areas with which I've had direct experience, either at UPN or whatever. And it's challenging.
Yeah.
I've been through some two-stage interviews, and the feedback that I get is that, you're terrific. We think that, you'd be, but we need somebody right away, and you don't have the direct experience with this software that we use.
Oh, wow.
And, it's frustrating, and it brings up all kinds of fears of, am I too old?
Yeah.
And, it's acting on faith. There was a phrase that it was introduced to me early on in recovery, which is that faith is hope with a track record. And I always could relate to that because I had a lot of hope. I hope this works out. I hope this happens, blah, 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 blah. It's been 33 years. I've been thank God, knock wood, I've been sober for 33 years. And so there have been a lot of times where I didn't know what was going to happen and could envision the worst.
Yeah.
And there have been times where it's been extremely difficult and extremely fearful and extremely challenging. And I can honestly say that in my adult life, all of my worst dreams have come true.
Wow.
But I'm here.
Scott, to put this in the verbiage of the podcast here, and for you to offer some advice to folks that might be listening, going through some of the same type of stuff. How do you keep the darkness at bay?
I've been thinking about this since, knowing what your podcast is and knowing that I was coming to talk to you. I've been really trying to come up with an answer, basically, because it hasn't just been one thing.
Yeah.
But the one thing I have to start off by saying is what I've already said, which is that things can seem really big and really incomprehensible. Like how is possibly going to resolve itself? But what I have to remember is I don't have to resolve it by tonight. And and try to break it down in that way. I also believe in a power greater than myself, which, puts it in the terms of, it's just easier for me to say it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised Catholic and got burned out on organized religion fairly early, but never lost sight of the idea that there was something.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got sober, they said that's all I needed, that was enough. That's enough to build on. Just so long as you believe that you're not the one that's running the show. And I still believe that. And I've been able to, I believe, I was also taught that to believe is a choice. You choose to believe something, which was a revelation to me. It's like, I can choose to believe this.
Mm-hmm.
And I do. I mean, I do choose to believe that there's a power out there that I can access if I do the work and if I ask for help through prayer. I don't get burning bushes necessarily. I don't get, the kind of neon signs that I would like,
right?
That would make things a whole lot easier.
Make it so much easier, for sure.
But it's there. It's there. I mean, the fact that I'm still here to me is proof that it's there. And so I have to maintain my connection with that. I have never eschewed the value of outside help, of therapy. I didn't pursue it so much in early recovery because, I mean, I went to meetings every night and spilled my guts, and, we all listened to each other, and I felt like, what do I need a therapist for?
Mm-hmm.
Well, eventually you don't have that kind of, in later recovery, you don't necessarily have the same people or, things transition, things evolve. And then sometimes it does pay to have that one person that you talk to if you can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gotten, like I told you, that this was that therapist who I just really valued. I saw him for about 1.5 years. Now, here's the reality of it. The practice moved to a nicer building in Midtown, and the rates went up because the rent went up. And I couldn't afford to see him anymore because it wasn't covered by my insurance.
Right.
So, there's a lot of realities going on in our world today that make accessing certain help challenging. But if I really, really needed it, I know that there are other avenues. I don't necessarily have to try to afford something that I can't afford. And I also still have friends. The most important thing for me to remember is to reach out of myself. Whether it is even, I have to tell somebody I need help, because I have a habit of making people think everything's okay, that I can handle anything, that I'm going to be fine, because that's who I want to be. And I, put that out there because that's who I want to be. That's not always who I am. I remember I went to a meeting literally the weekend before my cancer surgery and sat there and said for the first time, I am so afraid and I don't know what's going to happen. And I feel like a child because I'm so scared. And people just surrounded me with their love. And if I do that, I have found in my adult life, if I make myself vulnerable, the times that I've made myself the most authentically vulnerable are the times when the most love has come back at me and solutions have come back at me. But I had to put myself out there first, as opposed to sitting back like, why doesn't anybody know how much pain I'm in?
Right.
Because you're not telling them. That's why.
Right.
They think you've got it under control because you haven't told them. So reaching out is a huge deal, especially when you're dealing with your own pride and ego. That's definitely been, I'm grateful to have learned that, but it's something that has to be kept. You got to keep the machine in motion or else it atrophies or whatever. But that's really it. A spiritual life and being of service to other people. Because I'm self-involved as hell and I'm a narcissist, and I will stay, I'm so self-involved. But the gift that I was given was the ability to come out of that, or at least, that can exist. I can be self-involved. I can be that person, but I can also be this other person. I've often said that recovery taught me that there was not just a worst of me, there is a best of me. And I'm capable of being them both. The point is to try to be the best of me more often.
Is there something that just really is bringing you joy here recently?
I have a godson. this is, you know, this kid ruined me because I cry at anything now. if it if my mind can somehow relate something back to him,
Mm-hmm.
The faucets come on. Um, during that same period after I had recovered from cancer, I was playing this video game called DC Universe Online.
Mm-hmm.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all that stuff. The comic books I had read when I was a kid. And it's an MMO, which means that people from all over the world are playing together at the same time. And there's like chat that everyone can communicate through. And also you can use Discord and other audio servers to, you know, talk to the people you're playing the game with in real time. Mm-hmm. This guy that I ended up being on the same sort of league, quote unquote, with in the game, we got along really, really well. And it turned out we're both here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And one night, it was New Year's Eve. I'm playing a video game on New Year's Eve. You know, what a life. Anyway, he comes into the chat, the voice chat, and says, "Guess what, guys?" We're like, "What?" He's like, "I'm a dad." And we're like, "What?" And his wife had given birth earlier in the day. And so, you know, it's like, "Oh my God, it's so awesome, so awesome." So flash forward. I mean, we had one. I helped him get a really nice Mother's Day present for her through the place where I worked, and so that was the first time we met in person. And you know, that was a real leap of faith for him because you know you're meeting somebody from online,
right?
You know, so, but you know that worked out really well. We met at the Quick Trip, and it was all, you know, it was great. Yeah. Then flash forward into the summer, their air conditioning went out over a holiday weekend, and they couldn't get a repairman until the following week, and it was the first weekend that it was going to hit over 100.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, "Brian, you have a baby, you can't." He's like, "Well, we've got fans." I'm like, my roommate was in Europe. I was living in a 3-story townhouse with a roommate, and he was in Europe. Mm-hmm. I said, "My roommate's in Europe. I have this 3-story, you know, there's tons bring everyone here." He had a wife, a young stepdaughter, and the baby. I'm like, "Come here. I have the room. It's only a couple of days." And that took a lot of convincing, but he did come. Mm-hmm. I fell in love. I saw this baby and just irrationally fell in love. His face, I mean, he looked like those dolls that they used to sell on like QVC and stuff, those like dolls that look really kind of realistic and they're almost scary.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's what he looked like. He was perfect. And so that started my relationship with them and started me trying to find reasons to like see him. And then eventually they were having financial troubles, and Brian was going to go back to where he was from in Pennsylvania and work because he had an opportunity and save money and then bring them up. Mm-hmm. Things didn't go that smoothly, and there was sort of things developed for them, or and eventually it ended up in a divorce, and there was just a lot of stuff going on. But throughout all that, I stayed in contact with Brian and followed the progress, you know, of the baby, and where I could, tried to step in to either provide information or assist, you know, either financially or whatever I could do. Like I went up for his second birthday and threw his second birthday party because I wanted to, right. You know, and also I knew that things were challenging for them. So it's like, this was something I could do.
Right.
It gave me a reason to be alive.
Oh, wow.
Quite honestly, it gave me something outside of myself. And what I can honestly say is that little baby who is now 9 years old, but that boy was the first person I ever loved more than myself. Truly. Like the first person that I would, like, it didn't matter if it was going to be difficult for me or whatever, that, you know, he needed this. And so, okay, if I can help to make that happen, I'm going to help to make that happen, regardless of what I have to do on my end to make it happen, because he mattered that much to me. And, you know, thankfully, I was in therapy at the time for this whole survivor's guilt thing that I told you I was dealing with and stuff. And my therapist had to give me permission to say that I love the kid because I didn't know what I was feeling. That's how,
Wow.
Mr. Grown Up that has it all in control. I didn't understand what that kind of love felt like, or even
Yeah.
what it was.
Wow.
And he's like, I remember telling him, and I was like, I just really care. I just really care. And my therapist's like, Scott, you love him. Just say it out loud. You love him. And, you know, that's what happened. And so luckily, both Xander's mother and father have been willing to let me stay in his life and their lives, more so in the father's because we were friends initially. And his father has primary custodial care of him.
Mm.
But they are both, the mother and father are both, even though they're divorced, living in the same relative area in Colorado now.
Oh, wow.
And Xander is there going to school, and now we play a different video game, Warframe, and get online and talk and play that. Xander gave me a reason to be alive. And Xander taught me what it felt like to truly love someone. And the other gift that happened was right before in the year before my father died, because this is kind of when all this was happening. Suddenly I understood everything that my parents had tried to do for me, and also why they had made some of the decisions that they made. They were afraid for me going out into the world in the same way that I had been afraid for Xander and, wanting to assist and try to help as much as possible because of the fact that he was going to now be part of a family of divorce.
Yeah.
And this perfect little child. And I was just like, oh my God, no. But, things have worked out, but I understood. I really got it. And I was able to communicate with my father before he passed away, the fact that I get it. And he and I had a horribly fractious relationship. And I was able to tell him, I understand. I understand what it was like. I understand what it's like to love your child so much that you're just afraid for them, and how sometimes that can come out as frustration or anger, but it's only because you're afraid because you don't want them to be hurt. And, and I was able to tell him that I understood how hard he worked and everything that he sacrificed to provide for me. And at one point, like we talked very regularly before he passed away. And at one point, I had gone into sort of another round of apologizing for how I was as a teenager. And he just blurted out, he's like 94. He just blurted out, Scott, I don't know why you keep apologizing to me. I love you. Which affected me so deeply that all I could say was, okay. Because I heard him.
Yeah.
And it was genuine. It was totally unbidden and totally out of the blue. And so when my father passed away, I just knew that everything between us was good, possibly better than it had been since I was a child.
Yeah.
And that's because of Xander. So that's been a real gift. And that has been something that has gotten me through.
Yeah.
That's the thing that brings me joy right now, because yes, I am a classic film fan. Love that. Was involved with Turner Classic Movies fan club program for a couple of years. Got really deep into that, then got out of it. That program no longer exists. And yes, I have other interests that I pursue and hobbies and all that. But it's been being of service and caring about somebody outside of myself that gives me the ability sometimes to go forward. That was a hallmark of recovery at the beginning, is that service to others gets us out of ourselves we help other people, and in so doing, help ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's that same principle now, just, outside of the circle of the recovery community. This, another thing was that in the basic book of that recovery program, it talks about the program being a bridge back to life and becoming a functioning member of society. And so being able to take those principles and use them to live life with like the world at large, as opposed to just people in recovery, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And that's what I've, been able to do. And I'm very, very happy about it. I mean, I'm like, it's been a really unexpected chapter of my life. Oh. But I'm extremely grateful for it.
All right, Scott. Well, this is our third segment of the show. We've reached the point where it's time now for our Fast Five. Now, I still don't have any theme music for it, so you have to pardon me while I say it's time now for the Fast Five. Fast Five. It's time now for the Fast Five. Fast Five is powered by Poddex. It's a great app for podcasters. It gives you tons of conversation starters and questions that you can ask. There's an app. You can get physical decks as well. As a matter of fact, if you go to chewingthefatbr.com /poddex and use the promo code CHEW, you get 10% off your physical decks. But I'm going to use the app and I'm going to hit the randomizer. And this is just first answer that comes to the top of your head. Don't have to put a whole lot of pressure on you. It's not as stressful as people seem to think. And this is the first Fast Five of season 2. Again, let's no pressure.
Family Feud.
Here we go. If peanut butter wasn't called peanut butter, what would it be called?
Mellow paste.
Mellow paste. I like it.
That's the flavor. It's not sharp. Yeah. It's not, sweet, sour, anything. It's just kind of mellow. And it's, it's paste. I mean, it's like you could build a house with it.
Absolutely. I don't know. With the term mellow paste, it seems like because I have put like peanut butter in the roof of my dog's mouth. I just seem like I'm going to put some mellow paste in the dog's mouth. We'll see what happens.
There you go. That's how you could market peanut butter for pets.
There you go. It's mellow paste for pets.
That's it.
Perfect. Seems like a lot of P's in alliteration here. I love it. I love it. All right. Question number 2. If you could be reincarnated as an animal, what animal would you choose? Was that for a horse? Was that what that was?
Good Lord. Well, there you go. God, that's still a bird.
A bird?
Yeah. I mean, I've had flying dreams since I was a child. And I know that what's behind that is a desire to escape.
Oh, okay.
Listen, it's still kind of a fascinating idea to be able to fly.
For sure. For sure.
Probably some sort of bird.
That's awesome. As I've said several times before, my reincarnation animal will be a whale shark because they're the largest animal in the world and it has no natural enemies. I don't know. Because I've always just been a big guy and I feel like I try not to piss people off. I try not to have enemies or whatever, but so it's not like a traditional shark. I just always.
This is frighteningly telling.
Why?
About who you are and who I am.
No.
It's like you've got this great warm spirit that just wants to exist in a loving way in the world, and I want to fly.
No, but I think flying is cool, though. I mean,
get out.
Come on, to be able to just jump and take off, being able to fly, that would be so cool. That really would be so cool. I mean, I don't want to jump out of a plane or anything like that. I'm not, but
yeah, no.
But being able to fly would be really cool. All right, number 3. Ooh, I'm glad this question came up. All right, as a DC man and a movie buff, which actor made the best Batman?
Ben Affleck.
Really?
I'm part of that camp.
Okay.
Because I mean, my first Batman was Adam West.
Right. For sure.
Michael Keaton, he did a fine job, but he doesn't look like Bruce Wayne. At least not my idea of Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, though, that was awesome.
Yeah.
George Clooney made a great Bruce Wayne, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Batman, but he was a great Bruce Wayne. Ben Affleck. But seeing him do that role, Ben Affleck embodied Bruce Wayne and Batman for me. And so there's no question to me that he's been the best one so far. And it's coincidental that you say that because reviews of the new The Batman dropped today.
Oh, really?
With Robert Pattinson. And they talk about how tortured he is, how emo he is, and how I'm like, Batman needs to be able to overcome himself in order to do what he needs to do to, protect. I don't want to. I know he's got issues. I don't want to see him wallow in them.
Right. Okay. I like it.
Ben Affleck.
I got question number 4. How would the world change if there was no internal monologue and everything you thought you spoke out loud?
I don't think it would be good.
Yeah.
Which may say more about me than anything else. One of the things I had to learn the hard way in my life, starting from when I was a child, was not to say everything that came into my head.
That filter. I have a hard time with that filter myself.
To this day, I mean, my curse has been that I don't have to tell you what I think. You'll see it on my face.
This is true. 100%.
Even when I think that I'm being stoic.
Yeah.
I had a theater teacher in college that we were having a postmortem, and I wasn't happy with something that was said. And she was like, "Scott, do you want to say something?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Uh-huh." She said, "Because you have a face that will read from a mile away."
Yeah. Tell your face to be quiet. Yeah. All right, let's get the last one here. What was the last book that you read?
It's a biography of a classic film star named Ricardo Cortez.
Okay.
And I wish to God I could remember the name of the author because I belong to his Facebook group.
Wow.
But he did this exhaustive biography of Ricardo Cortez, who was a major leading man in the early 30s and who starred opposite every major actress of the era, but who did not necessarily survive the 40s into a long-term career past that. But he started in silent film. So the examination of his life is also an examination of the development of Hollywood and the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, it's exhaustively researched, and it's really good. I'm in the middle of it. So that would be the one.
Let's see, as I quickly search while you're on there, is that The Magnificent Heel? The Life and Films of Ricardo Cortez?
Boom.
Actually, let me get the author.
Who's the author?
The author is Dan Van Nest.
That's it.
Dan Van Nest.
That's it.
Magnificent Heel, The Life and Films of Ricardo Cortez. Interesting. I'll have to put that on the list and take a look at it, because
it's published by a company called Bear Manor, and they publish a lot of books about quote unquote forgotten film stars who were huge at the time, but people today don't necessarily know about. So it's a good resource if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Scott. And thank you for being on the show. That's it. That's our Fast Five, and that is our show. Thank you, Scott, for taking the time to sit here with me via Zoom from Atlanta and just tell me about your life and what's been going on. It's so good to see you and reconnect
Rob,
with you.
I am so proud of you.
Oh.
I don't even have words for it.
Oh.
Because we had a great time when we were in Augusta. And you were the audio guy in the control room, and I was running around in the newsroom, and we weren't able to spend that much time together, but to see, I mean, you wanted to do this thing and you made it a reality, and that's awesome. It's amazing. And I congratulate you, and I just couldn't be more proud of you for it.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. If folks want to be able to keep up with you after hearing your story, you on Instagram?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is just my name, Scott Brinson, and my face is my profile picture. And on Instagram, the names are reversed.
That's Brinson Scott.
My face, Brinson Scott. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you want to keep up with Scott, you might get some new friend invitations coming through, folks that your story is connected with. Scott, again, thank you so much for being here.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can buy me a coffee at chewingthefatbr.com. Also on the website, you will see I've got a journal available if you would like to take up writing some of your thoughts down as you try to keep the darkness at bay. A few t-shirts on there as well, just hawking the stuff. It's there, no pressure, but it does help keep the podcast rolling and lets you know that I'm there with you as well. And that's one of the most important things about this is you are not alone. We are all in this together. And I look forward to the next time we have a moment to sit a spell and chew the fat.